Good? Ready?
Silence.
Very good. Welcome. Yes, as a 3-month resident of Sweden, I'm welcoming you to my second public talk here in Sweden and my 4th public talk ever. And I'm really excited. Actually, I've been a little bit nervous all day, and I'm just very glad you're here. Because I've been going at this either alone or with a little bit of help, or actually more help than usual lately, but still I feel like this idea that I'm going to talk to you tonight about needs more attention. I am discovering my own limits in working on this idea like never before. And so I'm just glad that you're here tonight with your attention on this thing so that maybe it can begin to live more. Yeah, that's why I'm here. I woke up on Christmas morning in 2008, almost 3 years ago, with an idea. This idea was the culmination of over 20 years of investigation. And I knew the moment I woke up that this was the answer to my question. And I felt really, really good, because it had been, 20 years of just, searching in the fog for something that, as far as most people were concerned, didn't exist, and I was completely crazy for looking for it at all. And why didn't I just get a job? So now this is my job. I'm going to show you something. This is a condensation of the idea that I had on Christmas morning in 2008. I call it the darkness conjecture. And it reads, I'll stand back so you can all see it. Rapture, the natural human condition, turns to suffering in a catastrophically injured psyche, which, as an organic system, will heal itself with vital energy accumulated in the profound rest available in an absolutely dark environment. So that's kind of a mouthful, and I'm going to spend the whole night explaining it. Well, not the whole night. Had you there for a minute. The next 30 or 40 minutes. And then after that, we can talk about it. Any questions or comments or thoughts you have, I would love to hear personally. And then I was thinking we could take a break for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I was thinking we'd come back and discuss the possibilities of applying this idea here in Sweden. The first thing is that the reason this is called the darkness conjecture is, well, because of the idea of spending time in a dark environment, like a dark room, an absolutely dark bedroom, for at least a couple days straight, and just resting. And that this, maybe, could be the solution not only to my little problem, but the solution, as I started to see, to every problem. So, oh, somebody's gloves? Okay, don't want to step on it.
I came a few minutes late, but did you get your awakening in a dark room?
No.
No, I was thinking you did not know. It's enough now, okay.
It all started when I was 15. I was a lot like a lot of teenagers around the world. I was depressed and alienated and hypercritical of the culture around me. I think with good reason. But I just felt like shit. And that wasn't fun. Well, one day I was listening to this pseudo-spiritual person speaking on a video. My dad was really into these videos because the woman he was husband to had left him, and he was pretty wiped out by that. So he was, grasping onto anything he could find to sort his life out. And that was good for me because I was not feeling great myself. So I was sitting there watching these videos with him over and over. It was like on repeat. And so I'd heard this thing many times, but somehow in that moment when the person said it, something hit me. I always think of it as Luke Skywalker's torpedo, his photon torpedo. He's going through the little canyon and the Death Star is like, stay on target. I'm close. Luke, what are you doing with your gun? I know, I feel the force. And then he shoots the photon torpedo and it goes, and then it goes, and goes, and we have freedom for the rebels. And there were lots of photon torpedoes that night, or in that scene, but that was the one that went in. And this person, again, was just a pseudo-spiritual teacher, not really that important. And he said, do you know that all you have to do is love yourself and be happy? So I'd heard that many times, and it's not all that profound. I'm sure everybody's heard that in various ways. But for some reason, it just moved something inside of me. And within a few minutes, I was running down the street like I'd just been born. Like all the obstacles and problems that I felt were cleared away. And there was just this incredibly beautiful, perfect universe to engage and to be in. That feeling stayed with me for 3 months solid. It didn't matter what was going on. That's just how I felt. Well, that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And so when the feeling started to fade 3 months later, or after 3 months, it didn't make any sense to me because this feeling clearly was how life was supposed to be. That's how life really is. And all the, whatever happened before and whatever those crazy grown-ups are doing, I don't know, but this is it. So when it started to fade, I felt very confused and disoriented and desperate, and I tried to hold on to the feeling. But I had not done anything to have the feeling, and so I could not do anything to keep it. so it was gone. And I was left with this memory that simply wiped out everything else that I'd ever experienced in my life. Nothing else mattered anymore. I used to do, I was a precocious school child and I did lots of different things, and none of them really mattered to me anymore. I just wanted to know what had happened. Why? What was it? Why did it leave, this feeling? And so I spent the next 20 years investigating this single question. That feeling, I came to learn, in English is called rapture. And it is an extremely pleasant feeling of communion with the universe. And it's very quiet. This is the thing about the feeling. It's not like ecstasy. It's not effusive. It's not like a fountain. It's just this perfect calm inside, a perfectly calm feeling that everything is perfect. What I came to learn over the years was that, what I came to learn that day, the Christmas day a few years ago, was that I had had that feeling because for those 3 months, as a result of the intensified biological activity of adolescence, my consciousness was temporarily and partially restored to wholeness. There was some increase in the integrity of my consciousness. My awareness of the universe was simply increased. I saw more of it. And when I saw more of it for that little amount of time, I saw more of how it really is, which is to say, perfect and beautiful and complete. And when you see the world like that, as I think you all know, it feels like you cannot help but to feel intoxicated by it. You can't help but to feel like you just want to surrender all the time. It's just an overwhelmingly wonderful feeling. But it does not incapacitate a person. It does not make it impossible to live normally. I kept going to school, I kept playing my violin, I kept, doing everything that I normally did. I just felt really great. And then between classes, I would go out and lie down on the grass, and I would just pet the grass because it just felt so good. And then looking at the trees, the leaves in the tree waving in the wind, every leaf looked like a drop of pure life just kind of vibrating there in the sky. So yeah, I wanted that back really bad. And the voices from the culture around me could no longer be taken seriously. And I didn't know exactly where I was going or how or what I wanted in particular, in concrete terms. But I did know very clearly what I didn't want. And that was what those idiots were offering me. And I have fairly consistently refused their ridiculous offers of, you know the program. So, kind of edgy about that subject. So that's rapture. That's how it all started for me. Well, after those 3 months, I was introduced to what I would call the catastrophe, which is the internal disaster of my life, which in my opinion is just a good reflection of the external disaster of our culture, which it had faithfully replicated in my being. So I spent the next 20 years becoming honest about the fact that that's what I was looking at. I mean, I knew it was horrible. I didn't know that it had quite so much to do with me. And after about 10 years, I met a man who became my spiritual teacher for the next 8 years, who really just shoved it in my face consistently. He was merciless. And basically what he was telling me was, Andrew, your life is fucked up. Would you please get your shit together? I'm like, no, I had this experience when I was 15, and I know everything's really great, and so what are you talking about? So he really shook me up and brought me face to face with the horror of my situation, which, as I said, I still think is a perfect reflection of the horror of the situation in our culture. And so I studied that for a while, and I wanted to understand why that was. What was that about? How did it happen? Where did we go wrong? We couldn't have always been like this. I mean, you go out into this park and you look at squirrels and chipmunks and birds, and they seem fine. What's our problem? The trees, they show up with their green leaves every spring. They just, they drop their leaves in the fall. The sun comes up, everything else is working. What's wrong with us? Are we really such an exception? And if we're such an exception, how did we get here? Did aliens come and put us down here? They took us from where we really belong and put us in this foreign and hostile place and, kind of kicked us in the ass and said good luck. Or was there ever a time when human beings were having a good time on this planet? Well, I was pretty convinced that there was. And my evidence for this belief was the attitude and quality of children. Basically, the younger, the better. Animals and the rest of nature. And indigenous people. Indigenous, tribal people or Indians, Aboriginals, Pygmies, because they have had a very different take on our overall situation than we in civilization have had. And they have told us many, many times, and they have expressed their shock and their horror and their fear to us many, many times when we have met them. Some of them have made it into print. Some of them have had their words printed. And I was reading those words, and it was I'm like, these people, they know something that we do not know. So I could not accept that this was just how life was. Here were entire cultures, entire races of people who had lived harmoniously and happily in the world for millennia, far longer than our culture has even existed. And they did it without ruining the place where they lived. They did it without wiping each other out. They did it without destroying massive numbers of entire species. So to me, that's very impressive, and it makes us look kind of like idiots, as far as I'm concerned. They are the elders, we are the youngers. We have something to learn from them, not the other way around. So that was my foundation. If the indigenous can do it, If animals and trees can do it, and if babies can do it, then somehow we can do it. I can do it. There is a way, and I will find it. That was my conviction. That was my resolve the whole time. So, and as I studied the catastrophe around them, I studied philosophy, psychology, history, sociology, anthropology, a bunch of ologies. I studied design as well because my father was a designer and I learned that from him. I studied health because my mom was really interested in that. Actually, both of them were. And I studied diet, and that led me to something called natural hygiene. We're already, I'm amazed. I actually outlined this talk the other day. I'm like, God, am I going to be able to make it? This is the first time I've been able to put the talk in outline form. Before it was just, start talking and then I'd stop. And I didn't really know where I'd gone. But now I kind of know where I'm going. Excited. Wow, I'm giving a talk. So, we've already gone through 2 sections, and there's only one more. The first one was rapture, and the second one was the catastrophe. And I don't know, I didn't really need to talk about that because you already knew. But the third section is called natural hygiene, which is a school of health and healing that started in the United States about 1830. Natural hygiene is the reason why today we take for granted the benefits of regular bathing, fresh air, exercise, pure food, and getting plenty of rest, whether you're sick or healthy. Honestly, before the 1800s, almost nobody in our culture believed those things. If you believed in those things, you were a witch, or a freak, or something, but you just, you were a weirdo. So you can imagine the effect of these simple ideas on people. They started doing this stuff and they started getting incredible results because people were at such a low point that if they did even a little bit of something that was good, they would just get, a massive, somebody's device is going on. It's all right. I'm going to have to get the water. That's what it was. It was just the alarm.
What could rapture be in Swedish? Har ni något ord?
Uppryckande av något sånt.
Ja.
Uppryckande av något sånt.
Hänförelse. Ja.
Another word in English is bliss, which correlates with the Sanskrit word ananda, which is at the end of all of those names of saints, because supposedly they're happy now.
Could you say enlightened?
No.
Jag tror man kan translate till lycksalighet. Salighet, lycksalighet. Det är väl det man oftast översätter de orden till när man try to give the closest Swedish word for that.
Sure. I looked today, I won't forget you. I looked today I thought of this other word, beatitude, from the Bible. The Sermon on the Mount when Jesus said, blessed are the poor and blessed are those are the Beatitudes. And it's a state it's a really refined state. They even call, I saw in the dictionary, they even call some people in the Catholic Church your Beatitude. It's like a title, or like Your Highness or Your Holiness. So anyway. What was your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about that, because to me rapture is something of a religious term. It might just be my understanding of, or where I hear it like
It
they
got
talk
kind
about
of,
it in
yeah.
the Bible and Catholic, like the rapture is something with God or coming down, or I don't know, but they talk about the rapture.
Right. Well, and it got really famous last year because there was that guy who said the rapture was coming and everybody prepare. And I heard there, I wasn't there. I left that godforsaken country 2 years ago, and I hope I never go back.
Which country is that?
The United States.
Just checking.
I heard there were billboards. You could drive down the road and it'd be like, the rapture is coming. Are you prepared? Well, religion has this habit of taking words from our language and then getting them so associated with their thing that then we start to think it's just a religious word or a religious idea. That's not how I see this word and many other words as well. For hundreds, thousands of years, religion had usurped the concept of morality. There was no such thing as a secular morality. If you were moral, that meant you were spiritual. So in the same way, this feeling of intense communion, of connectedness and relatedness with the universe, that's just a biological thing. It's a natural thing. So, for me, it's a reality, and religion does actually help some people to restore that perspective and that feeling inside themselves. And so they do actually use it correctly. But the religious associations, I don't think they're essential.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a friend who got the same kind of awakening for about 7 years ago, so I know him very well before and after that. So I know very similar to what you experienced there. But the funny thing is that he told me, I can sit there, he doesn't judge anyone anymore. There is no judgment in him that anyone do wrong. You only see they are doing things. The life goes through him like without friction. It's not good and bad. It only goes through him and with him, and he doesn't judge himself anymore. And
Okay.
I noticed he do stupid things before, and now he do stupid things without judgment. He doesn't judge. So I cannot see, he doesn't seem to have any desire to improve the world anymore, because there is nothing to judge, good or bad. It doesn't exist really anymore. So now, I don't know about you, do you have a desire to improve the world still?
Well, I would guess that there are some similarities to what I experienced and your friend and what he experienced. But it also sounds like there are some things that are different. I'm obviously full of judgment and friction. So, also, in principle, I agree. The world itself does not need any improvement. Like I said, the whole foundation of this is that the universe is perfect, complete, beautiful. However, there are different levels at which truth manifests in the universe. On the most fundamental level, everything is fine. Just, take a chill pill. Nothing is ever going to disturb that. But we live on many levels. We live there, and we also live in this moment, in this world, where, from one direction you got people coming at you with clubs and guns, and another direction there's some hot chick trying to flirt with you, and then there's this other direction where you got to pay your rent, and how do you sort all this stuff out? It's very concrete and real, and there's all kinds of emotions, a lot of them very negative, that come up. So that arena requires action and doing stuff and changing things, and so that's how I view it. That's what I think. I myself, well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now. I'll talk about natural hygiene, and then we can talk more together. Let me hold this up here again. Okay, so we talked about rapture. That's the natural human condition. Oh, this word, sorry, I did learn a little bit of Swedish for this talk. And there's this word, människovillkor. Människovillkor? The human condition?
Yeah.
I kind of learned some Swedish. This is a phrase, I think, in all Western languages, because the idea is that, well, the human condition is, it can be good sometimes, but basically it sucks, get used to it. And so I just wanted to say right out in the beginning, no. Rapture is the natural human condition. All this other stuff that's been going on for 10 or 15,000 years, and it hasn't been going on any longer than that. It's just like, I don't know, an accident, or I don't know. But it's not really how life is. So, let's see, the next thing, turns to suffering in a catastrophically injured psyche. The catastrophic injury to the psyche, to consciousness, is what this culture does with every one of us almost every day. Especially when we're little, because that's when we're most impressionable, that's when we're most sensitive. If I go to a hospital today, it's not going to be pleasant. But if you take me to a hospital on the day I'm born, oh boy, you're going to cause real problems with this organism. Generally. At least that's how it is in the States. I've heard nicer things here, but I've also heard some sketchy things too. So, but the rest of this, actually, these are the basic premises of natural hygiene applied to the psyche, which is never really, well, that's not true. The psyche is now beginning to be viewed as an organic system. We have systems, or organic systems, like circulation, respiration. Are there any biologists in the room who can name some more? No, but you understand what I mean. An organic system is a system of organs that work together to produce some aspect required by life. So consciousness is actually the main system for any animal that possesses consciousness. Consciousness is its basic means of survival. So, like, what I do with my awareness is I make sure I'm okay, I look around for things that I need, I, hang out with people that I can help and who can help me, and so on. There's a zillion things. And the cool thing about human consciousness is that there is this power to direct it. Like I can put it over there, or I can put it over here. But it's still basically the same function that we see in squirrels and rabbits and gorillas. So there is life. That is the basic principle of natural hygiene. There is life, it is, and it lives. And what that means is that it preserves itself, it generates itself, it preserves itself, and it repairs itself. So, and only the second principle is only the life, only the organism has the power to do those things. And therefore, all the actions all organic actions are performed by the organism. The reason this is important is when it comes to looking at the maintenance and the restoration of health. Who is the actor? Is it the food that I'm eating? Is it the drugs that I'm taking? Is it the treatment that I'm receiving? Is it the actions I'm performing consciously? Or is it the autonomic functions of the organism itself? Well, natural hygiene says that it is solely the organism that performs the action. If you eat food, it has no power of action. It is basically an inert substance inside your body that your body will now use for its own purposes. In the relationship, the body, the organism, is the actor, and the food is the passive substance floating around. Now, in this example, food is a normal condition of life. Okay, the body does need food. But the food doesn't do anything. It just goes in, and then the body goes, oh, great, sugar, water, calcium, whatever. So in the same way, air is a natural condition of life. Water, sunlight, heat, friendship, sleep, exercise, all these things are necessary. We have to provide these things to the organism so that it can then continue producing more life. Well, all of it kind of funnels through a single concept in natural hygiene. And that's the concept of vitality or vital energy. It is this giving a talk thing is really different. I've got this plan and I'm going to talk about certain things. It's really important.
I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe after that you can start off with it. But when you say it's inert, the food is inert, I mean, I could take the conclusion it doesn't matter what you put in that case, Coca-Cola or chips, but I don't think you mean like that. Huh?
No, definitely not. Yeah, what the body does is it takes all this stuff and it turns it into materials for itself. It turns it into energy for itself, food, turns it into lubrication, like in a car. It repairs, replaces parts. I really like the car example, actually. You got fuel, you got oil, and you got parts. And if you keep putting them in, that car will keep going. Just don't put a Mazda part inside of the Volvo. Don't do that. And if you put the cheap gas in, you can expect you're going to have problems sooner than if you put the expensive gas in. So, let's see. So when a body is sick, the thing it really needs, first of all, is energy. It's with energy that the body will do everything. It will clean out the garbage. It will repair the tissues. It will actually recharge the nerves. Like when we wake up in the morning, the reason why we feel awake, or one of the reasons, is that our nerves actually have more electrical potential in them. They're really just like batteries, and it can even be measured with conventional scientific equipment, how much energy is in the nerve. Because all day long we're using that energy. And at the end of the day, it's gone. And that's why we get tired. Well, it's one of the reasons. And it doesn't matter how much we eat. It doesn't matter how much we make love. It doesn't matter how much fresh air we breathe that day. I mean, all those things are really good, but we're out. We've got to take a break. So in my view, what has happened is all of us got catastrophically injured in our most important vital system. None of us had a chance, or almost none of us, have had a chance to heal from that damage. But it is possible to heal from that damage. It must be, right? I mean, if I'm not dead, then, what? Do I have to reincarnate to get a new piece of equipment here? Why isn't it possible now? I mean, so this was kind of my conversation. And what I discovered about 5 years ago was that if I went into a totally dark room, this is 2006 when I first did it, so almost 6 years ago, I experienced a kind of rest that I never had before. And here's the thing about rest. Well, I just told you a minute ago. When you rest, you accumulate vital energy. So, what if the amount of vital energy accumulated were increased by 10 times? What if I only accumulated vital energy and didn't spend any of it for several days? Maybe, like, let's say there's this hump, and to recover from this catastrophic injury, I got to get over this hump. And I'm always down here, you know? And some days I'm a little bit higher, and some days I'm a little bit lower. But basically, my overall quality of life, my overall vitality is low. And my overall ability to function is very low. Because my equipment is damaged. There are subtle and gross tissues in consciousness. It's not just in the brain, it's not just in the heart, and it's not just in the gut, because all of those are actually centers of intelligence in the human system. But there are parts of the human being that we don't know anything about yet. We may not even be able to, see them. From all reports, there are. So, and all of those parts are alive. They may just exist in like another dimension, some sort of really subtle energetic dimension, but it's still alive. And if it's still damaged, it's still not going to work. So here's this hump, and here's my normal energy level, average. If I go into a dark room, I start increasing my energy level beyond anything I've ever experienced before. And maybe, and this is the conjecture, maybe it could increase enough, the point where I could just get over that hump, and the damage would heal. And the perspective of perfection and beauty that I had when I was 15, and that I had when I was very young, 2 and 3 and 4, would return. And along with it, the rapture that I think, as I said before, everyone has experienced, at least for a moment. That is my hope. And that's basically what I wanted to tell you tonight. Now, I've written a lot more about this. It's on my website, it's in my booklet, which I'm offering tonight for sale, if you like. And everything in my booklet is on my website for free, if you want it. And of course, I could talk about this forever, but yeah, that's basically it. So, yeah, questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
About the dark room. How can you give us an idea how, when you're into dark room, why does the energy level rise in how does it happen?
The energy rises because a person is resting in darkness. And we rest in darkness because we are not being stimulated by light. Apparently, the sense of vision uses a ton of brain energy. And the brain uses itself a lot of energy in the whole human system. In my case, in particular, it's my intellect that has taken over. Like, I don't know if that's really relevant. I mean, I like to talk about myself, and I'm sure you're fascinated. But basically, when you rest, you accumulate energy. And in darkness, okay, here's some cool stuff. Here's some really cool stuff. In the center of the skull, there's something called the pineal gland. And it's part of the endocrine system. There are 7 glands up and down the spine that secrete hormones. And these hormones go out and they're like liquid instructions, and they tell the rest of the body what to do. So when we are in darkness, how the pineal gland responds to that is by secreting melatonin. And melatonin is the stuff that makes us sleepy. It suppresses our appetite. It makes us sleep, and it makes us dream. Well, when you're in an absolutely dark room, the pineal gland secretes as much as it possibly can. And if you stay in the room longer than the usual 8 or 10 hours, well, it just keeps dumping melatonin into the system. And the more melatonin is in your system, the deeper you sleep. And the more deeply you sleep, the more energy you accumulate. And melatonin's just the beginning. When the nervous system is saturated with melatonin, the pineal gland starts taking it back up. It's like, wow, we got enough melatonin here. Let's do something with this. And it remanufactures it into something called pinoline. I don't even know what pinoline does, but it's even more amazing than melatonin. Okay, I didn't even tell you why it's so amazing, why melatonin is so amazing. I started lucid dreaming spontaneously in the dark room. I don't think that ever happened to me before. And I didn't study anything, I didn't try it, it just started happening. Then, like, I would wake up inside the dream, and then I would physically wake up, but the dream would continue. I actually got out of bed, stood up, opened my eyes, and watched the dream continue. Like, that's what happens when your system is flooded with melatonin. And this is after the sleep is so deep. Like, normally we sleep deeply about 45 minutes or maybe an hour and a half every night. In 8 hours of sleep, you get about an hour of deep sleep. And this is measurable in the sleep and dream people have figured this out a long time ago. There's all kinds of different sleep. Well, deep sleep is when our organism repairs itself at the cellular level. And then when it just infuses itself with nervous energy, with nerve energy. Well, in darkness, with all that melatonin, most of the time that you sleep is deep sleep. So instead, if I sleep 10 hours a day in darkness or 12 hours a day in darkness because I am really tired and there's a perfect opportunity, I'm sleeping like 10 or 11 of those hours in deep sleep. So I just got 10 nights worth of sleep in one night. And those, that's only if I was sleeping well before. Like, some people aren't even getting deep sleep anymore because the ambient light coming in from the street, which social engineer figured that one out? If we keep these people in a constant low-level state of torture, they'll never sleep deeply and they'll never question our system. So, anyway. Oh yeah, pinoline. Then, once it's flooded with pinoline, there's another chemical. And once the system is flooded with that one, I can't even remember the name. There's another one, and the name of this one I do remember. It's DMT. Your system will actually create its own DMT. You'll just go on your own like perfect, wonderful trip into union with the cosmos for a few days. That's what I've heard. So, in these profound states of relaxation and rest, the organism is just sucking up energy from every conceivable direction. So, there you go.
Excuse me. Have you tried to keep out sound as well during these trials, or just lights?
I tried, and as I did darkness retreats, I found out that it is very important. So ideally, the room would be soundproof. But it's not quite as important. Still, amazing things can happen with a little bit of noise coming from the outside. Just try not to have the neighbors start building a house right next to your dark room when you do it. That doesn't work at all.
I've read something very interesting about the light and dark while sleeping. Apparently they did some study and it showed that as little as a LED light on your nightstand, the digital clocks, that can upset your sleep. If you
Yes.
have like these little green digits.
Yes.
So optimal is complete darkness when you're sleeping, and very few people have that.
Yes. The difference between 99.99% dark and 100% dark is very, very big.
Yeah.
One interesting thing, if you use a red light at night, it will not signal the pineal gland to stop secreting melatonin. It will not interrupt the normal sleep cycle. So if you have to get up out of bed and you have a red LED light there, you're good.
So how does this really work? Like, let's say you would do one here in Sweden. How would it work exactly?
Well, here's what I think. The best thing would be to find a house that is already fully functional. It has a good ventilation system. It's in a quiet neighborhood. Great insulation, heating. There's a bathroom connected to a bedroom. Maybe more than one bedroom, so that 2 or 3 people can be doing it at the same time in the house. With a kitchen, so that the person outside who brings them food can make the food, and it's all right there. Then it's just a matter of darkening the rooms, and that's pretty easy. Actually making a space dark that's easy. Ventilating a space is really hard. I just spent 3 months, I spent a month and a half failing at that in Vebistrand, and it's really tough. So it's best to start with the regular building. So then, somebody comes once a day with food, and just to check in, say how you doing, and otherwise you just hang out. Your job is to sleep, and some exercise is good. And, you go in at night, you come out in the morning, 3 mornings later, so you got about 2.5 days in the dark room. And with 2.5 days, you can catch up on all the sleep you ever lost. That's a weird feeling. Mm-hmm. It's really wonderful.
Like how much, like when you do this for yourself, how much, do you have any recollection or any, do you know how long you actually slept? Like how many, let's say you were in there for, 48 hours. How many hours did you stay awake, do you know? Or,
well, I have no way of keeping track exactly.
No, I see what you mean.
But my sense, like the first time I did it, it seemed like I was sleeping at least half the time I was there. Because with all that extra melatonin, a person naturally sleeps more. Now, another thing comes into play, which is that when the intellect is not being stimulated, it doesn't have any food to keep going with, it kind of loses its footing. It becomes a bit disoriented, and it also begins to seem like thinking a lot is pointless. Now that's a state of mind I don't really understand, because of course thinking a lot is incredibly important, and I do it as much as I can, but oh, that's a joke. But other parts of consciousness activate. In my case, as somebody who is lost in his head, it's my heart that activates. And of course, this is a big problem. So whatever is locked in my feeling center starts to come out. And that might keep me up. There were some days where it was disrupting my sleep. But generally, half the time.
So you can get panic there.
Oh yeah. You can feel super, super good, and you can feel like you're crawling in your skin. For sure. But the cool thing is, the room is safe. The door is locked. There's no one else in there. Nothing's going to happen to you. And this thing that's always there anyway has a chance to finally work its way out. As you can tell, it hasn't found its way out of me yet.
One practical thing, when it's completely dark, how do you find a way to the bathroom and how do you eat?
Very slowly. Yeah. But you've got plenty of time. The room is super simple. It's not a room full of souvenirs and knickknacks, and it's just a bed and a table and a bathroom and maybe a hammock or a carpet. So nothing to hurt yourself on. Just.
Have you tried either meditation or what is called sensory deprivation? You know, water tank.
Yeah, the flotation tanks.
Yeah.
I have tried meditation, and I have not tried flotation tanks.
Okay, because
But I did read John Lilly's book, The Deep Self, about them.
it sounds a lot like what you're saying. You're trying to get at the same things that these floating tanks.
Here's the difference. The flotation tank is not a normal condition of life. It's not something that you would find in an ordinary person's day-to-day existence. And this is kind of the limitation of natural hygiene, that only normal conditions of life, things that have a normal relationship in sickness and health, are used as influences, or conditions, or agents in the process of healing. The flotation tank is pretty complicated. You know, you gotta like build, it's really complicated. Making a room dark, that's like one day's work.
Yeah.
For a couple hundred kroner, you can do that. So
I'm just curious because from what I've heard about flotation tanks, the feelings that you describe are similar.
yes, and they
So-
come very quickly. That's what I've heard.
But of
Like
course,
in 30 minutes, you're already like
yeah.
in this oceanic.
But I think the
Unity.
time period is an important aspect of what you're saying.
That's another thing. Is you
Keep it
can't
up.
stay in a flotation very long.
No.
Flotation tank very long. And I think there are some things that do need some time to work out. Now, if it's true, as I'm conjecturing, that it only takes 2 or 3 weeks to recover from this functional psychosis, basically, that billions of people are suffering from directly or indirectly, that's fast enough.
maybe that big accident you talked about for 15,000 years we have been without this rapture. Maybe it's the cause to that is that the male brain has been allowed to function.
I completely agree.
Maybe it's time for the female brain now in the darkness.
Well,
Or maybe the heart.
The heart.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Being in a dark room is a very feeling-based and very feminine experience. Like I said, you know, my intellect became almost useless. And my feeling center of intelligence just started awakening whether I wanted it to or not. And that's really good for me. And I think it will be good for the world as well. Yeah, this hyper-masculinity thing is really kind of hasn't really worked out, I would say.
Sorry, you didn't, about the meditation, did you get
yeah.
some result from that, or any similarities, or?
Yes. When I meditate, I do have some of the same physical experiences, sensations, and clarity that I described about these 3 months that I had when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I even meditate in the dark rooms sometimes. There was a moment when it seemed very important that I do that. Some kind of assertion of my own presence, my own will was required. Like I was being overwhelmed by hellish visions in my darkness retreat. And I just had to take control of the situation. And I did that by sitting and focusing on the one little bit of darkness that I could see in the room. That wasn't swirling with these galaxy-sized pornographic hell visions. It's not as fun as it sounds.
I'll quote you on that.
Not fun. And then slowly the darkness expanded, it blotted out this vision, and I got some relief. And then, kind of as a nice touch, this image of Buddha showed up in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm safe. But in principle, I am actually, like I said, I was part of this spiritual tradition for a while, and I learned some meditation there. And everybody there meditates religiously. But for me, the activity as a foundation for peace, internal peace on a day-to-day basis, was too conflicted. I couldn't believe that just having an orderly and calm life could be so hard. Like I said, I studied design because my father was a designer, and every good designer is very lazy. We just want things to work. I don't want to have to do anything. I want to show up, and it gives me what I need, and I go. So that's kind of my attitude about all of this. It's like, if it's going to take me 2 years or 5 years, and it's going to be really hard and full of a ton of conflict, and I've got to obey the instructions of this guy that I hate most of the time, then even though I know he loves me, and on a deep level I love him, that's just too hard. And even if I can do it, I already know that 99% of the population won't do it. And that just pisses me off. It really does. It's not a viable solution, okay? This thing where, honestly, I'm just going to let loose here for a second. This thing where less than 1% of the population gets to enjoy their lives on this planet, that's got to stop. And I'm fully, I'm going to the mat with that one. I'm not into it. There's got to be something that everybody, not just anybody, but everybody can participate in. And if it doesn't satisfy that criterion, it's off my list. So that's something else I really like about darkness, is that everybody can actually do this. The activity provides the energy necessary to perform the activity. You don't have to have any special knowledge. You don't have to be especially disciplined. You don't have to be any more capable to do a darkness retreat than you are today. Just put up some cardboard, some black fabric, get it totally dark, and go in the room and just stay there. That's the only requirement. Go to bed. So I really like this about darkness. I want to smash this fucking hierarchical system, so it never comes back.
A question, you got your awakening for 2008, you said, and then you did this dark room afterwards. So if I'm so right, now you have this awakening, but still in the dark room you get this pornographic hell. You said you get vision or kind of like that. So I got the impression when you awake, you are maybe free from most of your whatever, fear or...
Yeah, I wish I could report that that's true. No, for me, what happened on Christmas a few years ago was not an awakening.
No.
It was just a breakthrough.
Mm.
It was a massive breakthrough. I mean, I had many breakthroughs. Anybody who searches for something is going to have breakthroughs. But this was the breakthrough to end all breakthroughs. And I knew it. This is the answer I was looking for. When I was 15 and that cool-ass thing happened in my life, it happened because there was all this energy coming into my system because of adolescence, and that made my consciousness work, and that's why I felt so great.
Mm.
So now, if I go into a dark room, because I already knew about dark rooms, then I increase the amount of energy, my organism uses that to repair consciousness, and then I'm permanently in that state because it's completely repaired, and then I'm going to feel really great again. That's what I saw in that moment. And unfortunately, just seeing that is not enough to, make me enlightened or whatever. It's not enlightenment that I'm talking about here. It's just ordinary human functioning. Now, of course, there are some, enlightened people who say that enlightenment is ordinary human functioning. In that case, I can assure you, I am not functioning ordinarily. I'm just as sick and twisted a motherfucker as you are.
I have several friends who got the awakening, and they are still the same stupid people as before. So,
Right, but they have. It's not such a problem for them. Yeah, I'm just an idiot like you, but it's cool.
No, but
man.
they say the same. It's a huge relief for them. They said, if I've got all the money in the world, I will never change this what I have from this money. They say, even if in one way there's nothing happened to me, in one other it's an enormous thing happened to me. So
Sure, everything changes.
mm.
Nothing's different.
Mm.
But again, that's something else.
Mm.
Maybe we could do that too. But I want this thing first. I want to be able to. Yeah,
Can I just ask something?
Please.
Did you experience some biological changes or benefits after the darkness
Yes,
time? And what benefits did you actually experience?
physically.
Yes.
The principal one was the feeling of being awake. I mean, I thought that I had been awake before that. And I'm just talking about awakeness in the normal sense of the word. When I woke up on that third morning of my first retreat, I gasped because I felt rested for the first time in years, maybe decades. I'm like, oh my God, like this is what it's like to be awake? Suddenly my past seemed like a very hazy and unpleasant dream. Not exactly a nightmare, but just like blah for years. Like actually I was sleep deprived the whole time. I was exhausted the whole time. So this itself is just a miracle, and it's 2 days away for almost anybody. Some people have not gotten they have not had this experience in dark rooms, but most of the people who came to my dark room in Guatemala, which I did run for a while, they did have this experience of like, oh wow, I feel really rested. Otherwise, I also did a retreat for 6 days. And the effect there was more psychological. Part of my own personal wounding, the catastrophic injuries that I sustained, had to do with my relationship with my mother, and consequently with love and sex. And something healed during those 6 days that I had tried to deal with for years in many different ways. So that I was not completely desperate for sex, the attention of women all the time. Now, that state of being healed of that lasted for about 3 or 4 months. I don't feel quite as bad off as I felt before, but I do feel like I kind of, slipped off of this ledge that I was on for a while. That's 6 days. I think my theory is that if I spend 14 days, or if somebody spends 14 days, then that will be enough to really get over this hump that I was talking about. That's a different kind of hump. So, that's an English joke. Hump is an expression for having sex. So.
But that's very interesting, getting over the hump, because I think people today, we do meditation, and if we don't do it like all the time, then we also, or I can't speak for other people, but for me. But when I go into a retreat, I feel some sort of rapture, but then it goes away, and if I don't do these things all the time. So it's interesting to know if it's a possibility to have a longer lasting effect.
Effect, yeah. Yeah, I think that this feeling of rapture is just a normal, healthy feeling for human beings. And that we don't have it all the time is like alarming and weird. And what is our problem? And it's not something that we were ever supposed to achieve. And this is kind of my little problem with spiritual traditions, is they say, if you work your ass off long enough, and you're really disciplined, and you're lucky, then maybe you're gonna get somewhere with this. But, like you said, don't miss a single day, don't slip up, because you can lose your work, you can lose everything you've built up in a minute, and you're back where you were a year ago, on your own path, It's really dicey. I want something more certain than that. I know that if I go to bed at night, I'm probably going to fall asleep, and when I wake up, I'm going to feel rested. I want something that sure.
How often do you go into these things, say, retreats?
Well, it has turned out to be like every 6 months, every 8 months, and I usually only make it in there for a couple days. The longest I've been able to manage is 6 days.
A question I already thinking about myself. I go to bed in the night and I wake up in the morning. It's totally dark. And I have to rest during the night, and then I have the whole day with complete darkness. I was thinking it would be very boring, but maybe that's not the feeling that comes up in people.
It can get boring at times, but you in your essence are an astoundingly interesting person. Every one of us is. So, to be bored with your own company is itself very interesting. So there's something to notice, if you want to, or you can just go back to bed. But the normal experience of being a human being is joy, anticipation, excitement, gladness. These are the normal constant feelings. Occasionally they get interrupted by shock or horror or fear or something, but then we're supposed to just come right back to, I'm happy. So if you're feeling boredom, in Buddhism they say when you get to the point where you're feeling boredom a lot, you're at a very advanced stage of development. So who knows, man? You could just be one step away from where you're. Yeah, maybe a couple more questions, and we can take a break.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
About boredom, because I've read that there's a theory that boredom is an unnatural feeling. It's something that we've developed because basically it's like you're saying with the children. If you take a child and put him in any room anywhere, they're gonna find something to do, and they're gonna be happy. They're not sitting here I'm bored until they get older and realize that there's stuff to do, and So what I'm trying to say is that boredom it's not natural, and you can't get rid of it and just be content and happy with any situation.
I completely agree. There's this fad in education. It's called attention deficit disorder, ADD. There's a whole industry built up around ADD.
The ADD flu is going in America.
Oh yeah, yeah. And for me the problem is really simple. School is boring, and children still have their wits about them. They still have common sense. They're still, we haven't completely broken their spirits yet. And so they're like, I'm bored. I don't like this. I know. I'll just become hyper. Give me drugs. Please, give me drugs.
I was going to ask if you try to do these retreats in silence, or are you starting to talk to yourself after a while to keep yourself entertained or sing? Oh shit!
Well, if I don't talk to myself, I go crazy.
Yeah.
That was a joke too. But I had a couple people who wanted to do a retreat in silence, and so. That was cool. They didn't talk. Like one guy, he would clap. Once for no, 2 for yes, 3 for I understand. And I thought it was really good. And so I actually, when I did my retreat, as much as I possibly could, I did not talk to myself. And I think that helps, because speaking is a way of losing energy. Yeah, it's a very powerful drain. So yeah, If the building itself is quiet and the person inside is quiet, I think that makes it more effective. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but well, yeah, let's take a break. If anybody would like to come back after the break and talk about, maybe it's premature, I don't know. It looked good on paper. Okay, we'll talk about this and this, and then we'll come back and we'll start making plans to make a dark room. But if you would like, if this is interesting enough, please join me after the break. I would love to hear your ideas. I'm looking for people to work with to make this happen in Sweden. I'm going to be giving more talks in Malmö and Lund, Ängelholm, maybe Copenhagen, and because, well, you just got to know for yourself. I mean, you can't take my word for it. And if it's true, then my God, as far as I'm concerned, it makes it the single most important idea in the last 15,000 years. If it's truly a solution to all of the suffering and all of the problems that we experience, because they all come from the same cause, then what else matters? That's how I feel about it. Of course, because it's my idea. So, thank you so much for coming. And, of course, I'll be happy to sell you a book. I've got some over here. And yeah, see you in like, I don't know, 10 minutes. Back here.